Rebecca is a manager at Victoria University in Melbourne, and Mary currently works as a metadata analyst and is the editor of the International Journal of Indexing. Both are PhD candidates at Charles Sturt University School of Information Studies. So welcome, Mary and Beck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca and Mary's article reflects on what it means to be a library practitioner researcher. That is, somebody who's undergoing professional practice as a librarian and at the same time undergoing research. So to start off with that question that many PhD candidates absolutely tend to hate, what are your thesis topics / questions, and what led you to arrive at this question? So who'd like to start?
Oh, I always love a bit of a chat as well.
Elevator pitch.
Oh, thank you. Elevator pitch. Excellent. So in a nutshell, I started out working in federal government with disability and rehabilitation. So when I was working in this environment, it naturally made me quite interested in experiences of disability, as well as more so in how society is kind of shaped up and how it prepares for this. So when I first moved into working in libraries, I started out in an academic library, and I found myself quite interested with how we kind of provide services to people with disabilities, how we actually enact library services more broadly, and how we conduct accessibility and information services. When I then moved into a public library, it was like, whoa, my world just exploded, because like, of course, anyone that works in a public library, there's people coming through everywhere, all types of people, like we welcome everyone sort of thing. So I went into this environment and I'm just like, are we doing like as good a job as we could possibly do here with actually working with people with a disability, actually welcoming them, being accessible, all of these sort of things. So that was how my thesis kind of started off. And then from there, my research at the moment is looking at invisible disabilities and public library service provision. So accessibility, welcoming, information services, ticking it all, and I love it. So was that nutshell? That was a nutshell. Yes, excellent.
So I've been a professional book indexer for about 30 years, writing indexes for books from all sorts of disciplines and fields. And after so many years of making indexes, I was very curious about how people were using what I was making. So I had a look at the literature and discovered that there's really not much research about how people use indexes, full stop. I'm also aware that books are changing. We're creating ebooks, and I think this is a great opportunity to be thinking about how people find things in ebooks, not just using indexes, but using search functions, using tables of contents, how they use these tools in conjunction. So that's what I'm researching, how people do that in hopes of informing how we can do that better.
So it sounds like you've already had a lot of time as practitioners to think about these kind of questions that you want to investigate. How long did you think about doing a PhD before you actually committed to doing it? And where was that spark of curiosity that, I guess, tipped you over that edge that you talk about in your article?
I'll start with that. So I think I just sort of kicked off with that by saying I've been creating indexes for a long time, and my curiosity was, how are people using them? Still my curiosity. It will probably be my curiosity all the way through. So my impetus for doing the PhD, I'd done a Master's of Information Studies at CSU. And at that time, they offered an applied research stream. And I thought, this is perfect for what I want to do. I want to learn how to do research to discover how people are using indexes. So I did that, and that led, well, one thing led to another, and a PhD opportunity came up with a scholarship, and I grabbed it. So I thought about it probably in different ways for a while before I went into it.
I think I thought that was about 6 months. A different experience. So pretty much as soon as I started in public libraries, like because of that very recent experience in rehabilitation and disability, like literally one of my people that I worked with in my federal government service sat down with me one time when I said, do you know you can go to a library and print this out, because she needed to do a print-in for a job she was applying for. And she's like, I don't go to libraries. Libraries aren't for people like me. And like that, like it sat with me sort of thing, that I didn't have the trigger until I was kind of at a public library. And I'm like, I'm looking around and like the public library that I was working in was full of rich, white people, basically just, it was a wealthy suburb, it was a wealthy group of people. And I'm just like, I started to think about what did she mean there? Like, what did she mean libraries aren't for her sort of thing? So I think I thought about it for about 6 months and then I'm like, I'm not getting any younger. I might as well go through and actually research it and start looking at the topic. So it was just amazing. It was amazing. It was like that spark that just like, oh, I see what you mean. Oh, okay, yeah, interesting.
So, I mean, it seems that there's definitely a connection between, as you said, between the work you do, the questions you're investigating, and when we think about how we define somebody as a practitioner researcher, as you said before, there's the practice and there's the research. But how essential is it that there is a connection that is regularly maintained between what you work and what you study? And where are the challenges in applying them in your workplace?
You want me to climb up
Yes,
on my high horse?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So this is a high horse moment. Bear with me, everyone. I'm so sorry. So,
Big voice.
Big voice?
Take that
Okay.
off. I'm stressed.
Not me? Okay. Yes, me? No. Okay. Hi, Catherine. So with ourselves, we were talking about this very early today. So with a practitioner researcher, there's someone that's embedded in practice as well at the same time as researching. It's that unique position where you occupy both fields at the one time. And it's just like, I feel like particularly for myself, it's such a field of opportunity and it's a field of privilege and it's a field of responsibility as well. So it's kind of like, it's such a unique area. And I can't do this without climbing on my high horse. Okay. You go.
I think the easiest way for me to talk about it is in terms of my role as the editor of the journal, The Indexer, because the audience of that journal is practitioners and it's also academics. And the journal goes out in different ways. It goes as a print copy to members of a professional society, the Society of Indexers or other indexing societies, but it also goes into Scopus or other places where different people are going to be accessing those articles. So when I get a submission to the journal, I'm trying to think in both ways. I'm trying to think like a practitioner and like an academic. And when I send something out for peer review, I send it to both a practitioner and an academic. I want people to be able to talk to each other and I want to be that bridge between it. So it's not just about me as a practitioner conducting research and having skills to do both things, create an index and do research. It's about being that bridge between the two worlds. And that to me is equally important in that role of being a practitioner researcher, is being able to translate.
Someone that has that embedded understanding in both areas, which is something that we both feel very passionate about. Practice is enriching, but it is something that actively happens. You can't just step away from practice and then speak for practice. You need to be embedded in it. You need to be able to see with those eyes to be able to research them. Yes.
Yes. I hope we answered that well enough. Did we get all the aspects of what you were asking there, Andrew?
Well, I mean, I'd like to hear a little bit more about the ways that an academic approach can enrich your work, because I think we've all worked in libraries. There are always different ways of approaching things like projects and service delivery. And, as we look for that best practice, there are definitely different ways that we can approach that. So what benefits does an academic approach, research-based approach bring?
Oh, well, at its most basic level, respect, I think. Doing a PhD is getting your research card. And it gives you some respect in the academic field, but conversely, it can be problematic in the professional field. I think Beck probably can talk more about that than I can, because I don't work in a library. I'm not a librarian. I don't have that sort of experience. My colleagues are quite different, and they respect, if I have doctor in front of my name, they'll think about me in a different way, sure. For Beck, that's a different experience.
It's a very different experience. So very much so. So with research, with the academic side, to me, it does lend that respect. It lends that legitimacy. I'm conducting research. I'm not doing a Google survey. I'm not doing like a Google troll and just kind of like finding out what Google tells me about something. I'm actually conducting research that's done in an approach that stands up to investigation, so to speak. So I'm doing something in accordance to principles, guidelines, methods, and approaches that are recognized in the academic world. It then transitions what I'm doing in practice to something that is, I hate to use this word, but I'm going to use it, legitimate. Something that transitions it past, oh, isn't she a cute young thing doing a little bit of a user survey, how quaint, to someone that's actually engaging in the research process. And my findings when they come out are therefore that of a researcher. My experience with kind of like straddling that line, I'll be honest, hasn't always been positive. There's been some really, really good feedback from my peers and lots of interest and lots of involvement. And there's also been the times where I've been told that I'm pretentious for having, pursuing that study and wanting to use my doctorate and wanting to use the title that I've worked for 5-6 years sort of thing. So there's those kind of lines that blend in when you're doing these sort of things, when you're straddling those lines. And like I said, I reflect on that with the understanding as well that a lot of my peers have looked at it and went, oh, this is quite interesting. You're doing this. You're doing that, you're doing this. What does that mean? What does this say? Blah, 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 which has been really, really good. But yeah, there's that little voice in the back of my head that's always like, it's not always the case. So sometimes it can be a really interesting position.
This is probably more of a question for Beck than Mary, but what did your library colleagues say when you first told them that you're doing a PhD, and has that changed? Have those attitudes changed?
Oh, that was an interesting one. So when I first started my doctorate, I just moved into a new job and I was working at a public library in, like I said, a very wealthy suburb. So it was very wealthy. It was a coastal area. It was very, very white. And if anyone's familiar with the term, I'm going to say it's very crunchy. So like everyone there is full on granola. So it's kind of like when I first moved into that role and started studying everything like this, there was an attitude of bewilderment amongst my colleagues. You're doing what? And that wasn't exclusive. There were also quite a few people that were like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Yay, go you. But there were people that were all just like, no, you're crazy. That's not necessary. Why would you do that? That's a waste of time. You're bigger than your britches.
Did they want to know how it would get you a better job?
No. Ironically, that's never actually came up. But then when I started to move through, and it's still sometimes I'll still have that kind of interaction where people are just kind of like, oh, so you think you're the queen bee, do you? So cute. But there's also that attitude of this is really exciting. This is really interesting. Tell us more about it. This sounds like a great journey to go on. So it's kind of been very much, very balanced, I think. There's been a lot of people that's really, really interested. And there's been some people that are kind of like, you just think that you're a little bit better than everyone else. So it's been quite an interesting experience.
Well, look, I mean, I'll be the first to say it's not necessarily a bad thing if you think you're a little bit better than anyone else, because you're seeking to enrich your knowledge and through a rigorous process. But you also mentioned before how your position as a practitioner researcher is one that's unique. It comes from a position of privilege, but also responsibility. And so I'd like to explore that idea of what do you see your responsibility as in terms of making those connections, especially with those people who don't necessarily see the value of the research side of things.
I do definitely feel responsibility, and not just as editor of the journal, as I just explained, but of keeping my skills up in both sides as a practitioner and as a researcher. And I think we have an illustration in that article that defines how we mean that our research skills, thank you, are kind of the same size as our professional skills. They're not there yet. That's why we're studying how to do research as PhD students. We want to build those skills up to the same level as our professional skills that we've been building for years, and keep that little spark of curiosity in the mix. So the responsibility, I think, is to keep both sides going. And in talking to it sounds horrible, I keep saying both sides, but in talking to our academic colleagues and our professional colleagues, understanding their viewpoints and the language that they use and trying, again, to be the bridge between the two in a respectful way.
Almost in a way, acting as a translator sometimes as well. So particularly in my role, I am privileged to work with an amazing team, and we've accomplished so much. And one of the things that we've accomplished is DigiChat. So shout out to anyone from Victoria University here. But one of the things we've accomplished is DigiChat. And even though I haven't communicated that with my team, what I did in the background was scaffold that on learning theory, on learning design, on research approaches, on how to actually engage people in this process, how to break things down and how to actually follow them. So absolutely, this comes down as something that's a process, and again, something that is detailed and strict and ordered, but it's also something that we have so much opportunity in that organic sense of what's actually needed. So it's acting as kind of a translator between those two sides, the person on either side of the bridge that can direct you, as well as acting as that bridge.
So comparing the Australian library and information studies sector to overseas, you have a situation in overseas where quite often, especially in academic libraries, there's not only support from employers for research, but also the expectation that academic librarians will also publish regularly in academic papers. Is this something you'd like to see in Australia? Is there the opportunity for librarians to, I guess, to demonstrate their practitioner researcher status in these ways with the support of their employer?
Yes, definitely. And there are journals like the one that I edit that would be very happy to publish their research in. And also, I should say, you know, for Beck and I, we're finding other ways to support our research. For example, we just received a very generous grant from ALIA to work on a collaborative research project. And I don't underestimate that in any way. That's fantastic that a professional organization is giving us the space to do research in, as well as a university. I think that's key. I think that's absolutely key for people like us.
I'm so sorry. Again, I'm going to high horse this one a little bit. Apologies, everyone. So one of my bugbears with how we do librarianship in Australia is that research is seen as separate. It is always an occupational extra. It is something that we conduct in our spare time. We conduct with the kindness of ALIA with grants, or we conduct through getting things like study leave if you're eligible, or in my case, some purchase leave. So we conduct it, but we conduct it separately. We conduct it as an entity that exists off the side. I look at the example of America, and I have a lot of problems with how America does do like the library and industry field. But the way that they embed in research and giving back to the profession, contributing to the profession, our own self-development, it's embedded in. I work as a manager, but contributing to the profession is not embedded into my PD. It's not embedded into who I am as a professional. I feel that I speak for everyone here, where we have so much knowledge and we have so much experience, and we have together so many questions that we want to ask about our fields. And we need to have that platform and opportunity. And I know that this is a really bad time to say that because of COVID and what's been happening in the job market and what's been happening with employers. And again, I'm very, very lucky and very grateful that my employment history has allowed me to have things like purchase leave. But it's something that increasingly, if we want to see that respect, that legitimacy, that growth of the profession, this is something that we need to be embedding in. So off my high horse now, sorry.
Do you worry that there's the risk that library and information studies may no longer be seen as, you know, a legitimate research field in Australia?
I think that's a bigger question that we can answer.
Yeah, this is a big question. Yes.
Well, by whom? By whom? Who won't see it as
well, by the wider academic community, I guess. I mean, we already see a lot of multidisciplinary fields that are edging into the library and information sector. We see ARC grants go to non-librarians who are doing research into libraries and into library repositories, and you know, my feeling is that a lot of these projects should be led by library practitioners and researchers. So, I mean, it seems like there might be lost opportunities in those ways because people don't necessarily look to the librarians to do the library research.
I think that's an excellent point, but I think that's a trend across academia in general to do more interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary research. And I think it's an excellent one. There are lots of intersections I can think of between my research and, say, publishing or IT or many other fields. I think it's just a question of probably me reaching out and saying to a practitioner or an academic or someone who's interested in the same thing I'm interested in, do you want to work on this together? I think we need to be really proactive about it rather than me sitting here waiting for someone to come find me.
Yeah.
Like things like what we're doing today. Talking to you all.
I agree, and like I'll reflect back on one of the experiences I had with Deakin as well around the systematic review process, where we have incredible health librarians embedded in assisting with systematic reviews, and that can be anything from training academics how to conduct them to actually full-on conducting a systematic review that will be used in their research. And you look at that and there's so many opportunities already there. And one of the things that I reflect on with that is that it's increasingly in the health disciplines been a requirement that an information professional is engaged in those sort of systematic processes. And I think how marvelous that is and how much opportunity there is there. And I think with our profession as well, reflecting on what Mary has just said, that if we want to have these opportunities, we need to take them. And we need to step forward and we need to put ourselves in places and we need to market ourselves and we need to communicate in a different language than we have done before. And that's hella scary. Like that's terrifying for everyone involved because we're going, look, the way that you've done librarianship for like 20 years, that's nice, but we're now doing it this way instead. And that's like, that's scary. That's really big and that's really scary. And it requires a commitment from everyone, from managers, from staff, for everyone. But I think the results are worth it. And I think for our profession as well, if we're taking that space and saying we are legitimate, we are worth our salaries, we are worth this job, we are worth this position, it's all tied into that. It's the outwards facing is going to be an increasing requirement.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a few questions in the chat box. So the first one I've got is from Arjun, Arjun says, question to you, both of you. It's really fascinating to hear your varied experiences. How, in the opinion of both of you, does the repertoire of this myriad experiences underpin the praxis of your research?
You're asking, Arjun, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're asking how this influences how we actually conduct our research. And I'm going to start answering in that way, but if I'm wrong, please come in the chat and tell me. It's been really noticeable to me that many of the PhD students at CSU in the School of Information Studies, many of us are part-time PhD students also working in practice. Some of them may identify as practitioner researchers also, I don't know. Thank you, we got it right. And many of us, I'd say almost all of us, are using a qualitative approach to our research. I'm not going to get too technical into that, just to say that we are doing things maybe a little bit differently than it's been done in the past, and we're doing it very much using some of the knowledge we already have from practice. And it's definitely influencing it. If you want me to go into a lot more about research methods in that regard, I can. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Absolutely. It impacts on everything from the decision to start, to how to construct the research, to what questions to ask as part of the research, to how to engage. We reflected today on with the award that we have, the grant through ALIO. We were doing some of our research today on that. And we've reflected about the pack that we created to go to ethics for our project. And we were saying about how we knew what was needed in that pack. And when we took that to ethics, we knew what was needed because we're practitioners. And we knew what was required for that pack because we've worked in practice.
Worked with those participants.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. It's impossible for us to separate out our research from our practice. And I think it's impossible for us to separate out our practice from our research. Would you agree?
It's difficult because we do have to, in rigorous research, talk about our position as the researcher and as a practitioner, and we have to really think that through. It can be very confronting, but I think it's important and it's definitely part of our how we conduct research. Yeah.
Thanks. Now we've got another question from Meredith Beardmore. And the question is, lifelong learning is an established concept within most librarians. How come research is not seen as an extension of this?
Lovely question.
Brilliant question. Brilliant question. Yes, come join us. Come join us. We've got jackets. So this is one of my bugbears. Like, to me, especially, I think because I do work in that management capacity, I'm very privileged to be able to work with a team where I try to bolster those opportunities to engage in research. I try to bolster those opportunities to do things like proposals, reports, everything like this. So research, getting ready for research, conducting research, learning about research, producing research, doing publications, everything like this should be embedded in, like, we're information professionals, like this should be embedded into how we do our jobs. But unfortunately, because we're Australia, it's not. It should be.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, we're almost out of time. Actually, Louisa's just made an interesting point. That once she became an academic librarian supporting PhDs and seeing their journey, she couldn't imagine trying to fit it in with her work, nor writing publications. And I think that's a really good point that, especially now at the moment, resourcing in academic libraries is a real issue. And, everyone's trying to do more with less, and or just trying to get by with less. And I guess what we're almost proposing is that librarians need to, as a practitioners, they need to do more if they want to become practitioner researchers. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
But-
But it's not without sacrifices.
No,
Mm.
there's many sacrifices you make as part of this, and that's always the way of any journey, I think. You might sacrifice to gain a new skill that's required for a promotion that you want to do. You might sacrifice to gain a new skill that's required because you like cooking French cuisine and you want to learn more about pastry. So you make decisions every day about how you spend your time. And certainly with myself, and I know Louisa as well, I've had the privilege of being able to work with Louisa. And I know that we've talked before, it's always time. There's always so many things that compete onto your time, and you've only got a finite amount of it. It's a hard journey to be able to balance that, but it is
You
good.
have to ask for help. I mean, for example, an OLIA grant, we took the time to ask for that assistance. That was great. A scholarship from a university, which I'm privileged to have. Working with Beck, who keeps me enthused about it. Anything that helps you, it's not just time, it's keeping your mental balance to do it is, I think, perhaps harder.
Yeah.
But that's where it takes a village.
Yeah.
Work with Mary, work with Ron, work with Kate, work with Delaney. It's fascinating and amazing, and I just love it.
I think we probably ran out of time.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we're almost out of time. Another quick question from Arjun. Can the idea of practitioner researcher give a new dimension to the idea of continuing professional development? Which is a fantastic question, because they're obviously so closely aligned. Would you like to speak?
Never-ending professional development.
Very much so, very much so. I honestly 100% see this as being a stream of professionalism, and certainly continuing professional development. Yes. Tick, 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 tick. Absolutely.
And Jackie from ALIA has just made the point that we have a LAS practitioner research specialisation, the ALIA PD scheme. So any research that you do counts towards your continuing professional development with ALIA. So we're almost out of time. I just have one final question for the panel. For those in the audience thinking about embarking on this practitioner researcher path, but maybe perhaps not ready to take on the PhD, what tips would you offer to get them hooked and onto the path?
Hooked and doing a PhD, gosh, that's a very personal journey. It's going to be different for everybody. The journey is going to take you in places you didn't expect. You just need to be open-minded. You need to be passionate about what you're studying, particularly if you're a part-time student and you're doing it over 5 or 6 years. You need to really care about that. And if you can, continue to connect it with what you're doing in practice, and you'll stay passionate about it. I guess that's my tip. You got to have that curiosity. You got to have that spark of, I really want to know the answer to this. And be aware that other questions are going to continually come up as you go.
To do a PhD, especially over a long time, to do research, especially over a long time, find something that's into the future. Find something that you can answer currently, but also keep your eye on that horizon, on that blue sky. If you look at something that's only topical at this moment, bear in mind that it's only topical at this moment. Think about future implications. Think about what's going to be happening in 6 years, or if you're full-time, 3 years, 4 years. It's not a short journey, and it's not an easy journey. And there will be moments where you're there and you're just honestly sculling coffee at 3 a.m. thinking to yourself, how did my life come to this? So there will be moments where you would debate and you would question everything that you've possibly ever discussed or ever learned. Having an eye on that horizon and what's going to be coming out and what's behind those clouds, what's the blue sky beyond, that will help.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful point to end this discussion. So could everyone please thank me in joining Mary and Beck for joining us today. And remember that this recording...
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone, for coming along.
And this session will be available to view online soon. So once that comes up, we'll send you an email and feel free to share it amongst your colleagues. Otherwise, our next session will be in early March. It'll follow a related theme of education. So keep an eye out for more details in Alia Weekly about who our speakers will be. And look forward to seeing you all next time. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.